Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about the draft e-commerce rules and the concerns they have raised. We also take a quick look at the recent deaths caused by lightning and why so many people are killed each year by it. But first, we talk about the Congress crisis in Punjab. The Punjab Assembly elections are scheduled to take place next year. And for some time now, the Captain Amrinder Singh-led Congress government was under the impression that these elections will be easy for them. The party had come to power more than 4 years back. They took over from the Shiromani Akali Dal and the BJP coalition that saw Parkash Singh Badal as the chief minister. And since then, things seem to have fared well for them. But this has changed in the past few months. Members and legislators from within the party have raised questions about the leadership. And this includes Navjot Singh Sidhu. All this has to do with what party leaders feel about Chief Minister Amrinder Singh, a recent verdict by the High Court, and also the ongoing power crisis in the state. In this segment, to explain it all, Indian Express's resident editor from the Chandigarh newsroom, Manraj Grewal Sharma, joins us. So Manraj, you write that the Congress party was pretty confident that they would easily come back to power next year, that it'll be a pretty smooth ride for them essentially. And it seems that has changed now. But before we talk about that, could you talk about what gave them that confidence that it'll be an easy ride?
See, one is the majority, the formidable majority with which they came to power in 2017. So traditionally their rivals have been the Akali Dal. So Akali Dal was completely decimated. I mean, they have never done so badly. They just got 15 seats in 2017 compared to 77 which the Congress got. And AAP guys thought they were seeing a wave of sorts because their rallies drew huge crowds, but they could also garner only 15. So it's as if 3/4 of the state went and voted for the Congress. And after that, you had this lockdown, you had this curfew, and the government did a good job of managing the lockdowns. Even the migrants were looked after in Punjab. So the situation was good in the sense everything was controlled. The disease, though we did have a large number of cases, but things seemed to be in control. This is what gave them hope that we don't have any tangible opposition as of now. We've done a good job of dealing with COVID. So, and there weren't any voices of dissent from the opposition. Opposition also seemed to be very desultory, lying low. So they thought it's going to be a walkover.
Okay, so what has changed now? What has made them nervous and what has led to this crisis?
Okay, so it had been building up for a bit before the lockdown, as in there were some rumblings within the Congress. There were some MLAs who were not happy that they were not accommodated in the ministry and that they did not get access to the chief minister. And there was this general feeling, the simmering feeling that it's the officialdom, it's the bureaucracy which is controlling the government, and that we, the legislators, don't really have the power. I mean, we have to wait in queue to be heard by them. And the chief minister, then what he did was he had his official residence in Chandigarh. Then he moved to his farmhouse. So it became further impossible for people to go there. And he stopped going to the secretariat. Then there's always faced this charge of being slightly inaccessible. So that got concretized further when he shifted to his farmhouse. This coupled with the COVID lockdown restrictions, so it kind of made access more difficult. So that had been going on. That simmering discontent was there, that, the officials are not listening to us and all of that. Then what happened was the turning point was High Court verdict on April 9. So this was regarding a case of firing on protesters who were sitting in dharna against the sacrilege.
And now, before we go ahead, could you just explain what this sacrilege was?
Okay, the incident of sacrilege dates back to 1st June of 2015. That was when the holy book of the Sikhs called Guru Granth Sahib, it was stolen from a Gurudwara in Burj Jawahar Singh Wala village. And the Badal government could not find who stole the book. So there was a lot of outrage over that incident as well. And somehow it piped down. But in October, posters again appeared outside the shrine of Bargadi. There was these handwritten notes saying that we will tear the book. which is blasphemous to the Sikhs. And on October 12th, torn pages of the holy book were found outside the Bargadi Gurudwara. So after that, there was huge protests all over Punjab, especially in the vicinity. So the Behbal Kalam village is just opposite, is just across the road to Bargadi. So Behbal Kalam, Kotkapura, these are a couple of places where police action took place on the protesters. So it was on October 14th that Punjab police opened fire at protesters at two places. One was at Kotkapura and the other was at Behbal Kalam village. So at Behbal Kalam village, two protesters were killed in the fire.
And how had people reacted to the firing then?
So after that, all hell broke loose in the state because firstly, people felt that the forces behind the sacrilege, I mean, people who first stole the holy book and then tore the pages, that the culprits hadn't been brought to book. And secondly, then these two people had died. So it was as if the innocents were killed and the guilty had not been punished. So that kind of spiraled out of control. And not just this, there were quite a number of incidents of sacrilege took place all over Punjab. So it seemed as if the Badal government just couldn't address, it just couldn't bring those culprits to book.
Okay, so we now come back to the present. We talk about the April 9th verdict of the High Court that was regarding this police firing on protesters, and that has now contributed to the Congress crisis in the state. What did this verdict say?
So what the verdict said was that it quashed the special investigation team probing this incident, saying that they hadn't followed the rules. And then it also gave a clean chit to the Badals. Now, the Congress government had come to power saying that we will punish the guilty, we will punish the people behind the sacrilege and the firing. And now the court came down very heavily on the sit and said it was politically motivated. The investigations were politically motivated. So it completely put Congress on the back foot. And the Akalis celebrated this verdict. Akalis said, look, all along we've been saying we are innocent, and this High Court verdict proves this. And Congress, which had been saying that, we will punish the guilty. So now there were murmurs amongst the opposition that the captain government is hand in glove with the Badal government and nothing is going to come out of the case. So there were voices within Congress. There was this clamor that this is showing us in very poor light. And how will we go back? Elections are around the corner. How will we go back to the people with this kind of verdict? So there is something we need to do.
So before this, you already had the people within the Punjab Congress Party who were annoyed with the leadership, with the chief minister. And then you had this High Court verdict that again made party leaders angry. And now we come to the emergence of Navjot Singh Sidhu, who is also, of course, a Congress leader and who also criticized this verdict. What happened after this?
So then that set off a chain of events. Navjot Singh Sidhu, in fact, went to the ground zero, the place where the sacrilege had taken place, on April 14th. So the judgment came on 9th. April 14th, he goes there and he says, how can a person who can't punish the culprits, how can he look after all of us? Taking a pot shot at the captain. So after that, his tirade started and there were a couple of more ministers who joined in. So the media started getting leaks about XYZ are very unhappy with the captain and this minister offered to resign and the captain is on the back foot. So, and every other day, then Sidhu gave this huge interview, no holds barred interview in which he criticized his government. So what happened is ministers, MLAs, everything together. So the perception that people had is that A, you yourself are so discontented with your government, which means that you have not fulfilled your promises. You guys yourself are saying that. Sidhu is, of course, part of Congress now. So when Sidhu says nothing has been done on the ground and a couple of more ministers join the chorus and MLAs say our work is not getting done, then of course it's like mayhem for the government. And the perception also that what goes out is that you have a weak leader because everybody is crying loud against you. So that is what happened. And this situation reached the High Command. They set up a 3-member panel and they called about 150 people from the state and asked each one of them about what is wrong. I mean, who is at fault? Is Sidhu right? Is Captain right? What are the issues? So after that, interestingly, they gave an 18-point charter to the CM saying that these are the 18 things that you need to do before the elections.
And what were some of the highlights of these 18 things?
Some of the highlights was that you will conclude the investigations in the sacrilege case, and all the schemes that were promised for the Dalits that you will implement, because Dalits form 32% of Punjab's electorate. And in these elections, because BJP is going it alone, so BJP has been promising a Dalit chief minister. So after that, Akali Dal started promising a Dalit deputy chief minister. So going back a bit further, Akali Dal has already started its campaign. They announced their candidates, I think in February, with Sukhbir Singh Badal, party president himself, announcing that he will fight the assembly elections from Jalalabad. So everybody was at least Akali Dal was in a poll mood, and they started making these announcements.
And now you traveled across Punjab and spoke to legislators in the party. What do they make of the whole thing? What do they feel should be done?
For one, they feel, especially the legislators in Malwa. Malwa is a belt in southern Punjab, so which has 69 seats. Out of 117, 69 seats are in Malwa. And that is the epicenter of sacrilege. So, sacrilege protests, etc. So, they feel that the culprits must be brought to book. The thing is that justice must not be done, but it also must be seen to be done. I mean, people should feel that they've got justice. So, one is that. Second, right now, somehow there's been a huge power situation in the state. Lots of power outages, not just in rural areas, but in urban areas as well. So that has also become a hot potato, because all along Sidhu has been complaining that you did not go back on the power purchase agreements that the Akali Dal signed. So the agreements are such that no matter how much power we consume, we have to give the power companies a certain amount of money. Even if we are consuming less, say, even if you are consuming only, say, XYZ megawatts, but according to those agreements, we have to pay them particular sum for a particular amount of units. And what has happened is that many times during the winters, the state consumes much less, but it continues to shell out more to the power companies.
Okay, so now you have the legislators being unhappy with the SIT being dissolved, Sidhu coming up, and the power crisis. This is all coming to a boil.
Exactly. So it's like everything happened together.
Okay, so you now have a major challenger like Sidhu coming up. I mean, we know that he'd been lying low after quitting the cabinet in 2019, and he's not really a prominent leader, but he is a known face. And with him coming up and saying these things, what solution is the Congress looking for him? Like, will the party eventually have to give him a position or a significant post to resolve this?
Absolutely. That's what they are saying. Because Sidhu is also considered very close to the Gandhi siblings. The chief minister goes and doesn't get an appointment with either Sonia Gandhi or Rahul Gandhi, but Sidhu goes and secures an appointment with the Priyanka and Rahul and spends 3 hours with them. So the message that he's sending out is that I'm very, very relevant for the High Command. But on the ground here, the chief minister has put his foot down that Sidhu wants the post of Punjab Pradesh Congress Committee chief. He wants to be the chief of PPCC. And chief minister doesn't brook that. So the general thinking is, after the chief minister's latest meeting with Sonia Gandhi, where he came out looking suitably pleased and said, I will accept whatever the High Command says. So the buzz is that Sidhu may be made part of the screening committee and, of course, the campaign committee, etc. So he could be given a significant post. There was also talk about him being made the deputy chief minister. But Sidhu has time and again denied that. Sidhu is this post will not be acceptable to me. It should have come earlier, not now.
I mean, for someone who had been lying low, it seems that he has taken the High Court verdict as a perfect opportunity to move up in the party and get a significant post. But at the same time, with the Congress crisis, you write that it has opened up possibilities for other parties, AAP and, of course, the Akali Dal. How have they taken advantage of this?
Oh, they are. In the sense, Akali Dal was on the back foot, especially after the farm laws, because after the farm laws, people wouldn't let them enter the villages. So now, because of the power situation, you have Sukhbir Badal coming to Chandigarh or going all over Punjab and protesting against the power outages. So he's positioned himself as the crusader. So suddenly you have a lot of rallies, etc., a lot of meetings by the Akali Dal. Similarly, Kejriwal was very upset last time because he had really thought he will do very well, the party will do very well in its maiden outing in 2017, but they really tanked. I mean, they had thought they would make the government and they just got 20 seats. So this time Kejriwal has been very active. So Kejriwal made a flying visit to Chandigarh after this power crisis erupted and declared whether it's an urban consumer or a rural consumer, I will give 300 units free to everyone. And after 2 years, I will also give 24-hour power supply. So this promise has tremendous resonance with people, both in the city and villages, because they don't have power right now and very high power tariff. So here is someone who says, look, I've done it in Delhi and I can do it here. And since he's done it in Delhi, they are prone to believe him.
And in the last week, we've had developments like Amrinder Singh meeting Sonia Gandhi, him calling up political strategist Prashant Kishore, all of which has made news. But on the larger level and stepping back, how important is it for the Congress to win the state of Punjab?
I think it's very important because it's one of the few states that backed Congress and in a very big way when Congress was on the back foot throughout the rest of India. So it is a very important state for Congress. Also, if you see the farm agitation, the anti farm laws protest, it originated in Punjab. And now, I mean, whether people think it's pan India or not is a matter of debate, but it remains the biggest eyesore for the Modi government. You have these people camping outside your national capital, and you can do little about them, and they are unrelenting. And this is happening in a state which is governed by Congress. So, Congress is of great importance in the larger scheme of things, nationally as well.
And next, we talk about the draft e commerce rules. The government last month proposed changes to the e commerce rules under the Consumer Protection Act. These proposed changes place restrictions on what e commerce platforms like Amazon and Flipkart can or cannot do. And the government claims that they would help consumers at large. These rules, however, have raised concerns that they might actually do the opposite and might also impact the ease of doing business for e commerce companies in India. Moreover, the rules have also confused many industry players. Earlier, the government had sought comments and views from stakeholders by July 6. But after several red flags were raised, this date was shifted to July 21. In this segment, Indian Express's Pranav Mukul joins us to talk about these draft rules. So Pranav, before we talk about what these new proposed rules state, could you first talk about what is the government's reasoning behind proposing these new e-commerce rules?
So these e-commerce rules have come as a part of the consumer protection rules under the Consumer Protection Act. And so basically, the overarching theme of the Consumer Protection Act is that the government wants to protect consumer interest. So to that extent, that's the reasoning. And the government has been trying for several years to have the norm or have its rules of having foreign funding in only marketplace based e-commerce models and not inventory based. So it's trying even further now to have that followed in letter and spirit.
And what is the difference between marketplace e-commerce models and inventory based ones?
So the main difference between a marketplace model and inventory based model is that the government essentially early on didn't want foreign e-commerce companies to have control over the inventory so that they could not buy a lot of stock, and that way that's something that could hurt small sellers or small retailers in the country. So essentially, if I were to put it in a conventional industry metaphor, a marketplace is essentially like a mall. So as a mall, there will be shops and sellers of various brands in your property, in your platform, so to say. But you yourself as a marketplace or as a platform won't hold inventory in any of those things. You'll be just facilitating the access to the consumers and so on. So that's what a marketplace like an Amazon or a Flipkart does. So all the sellers on it are supposed to be third party sellers and small sellers from across the country that use the technology platform created by an Amazon or a Flipkart. As opposed to an inventory model, which only Indian companies or companies with Indian capital are allowed to operate, where you will purchase, store, manage stock of certain goods and sell it as per whenever you get the orders.
And you mentioned that the government has been trying to stop foreign funded e commerce companies from holding any kind of inventory. Why is that?
So this has been a long-standing sort of principle that the government has stood by, that foreign companies should not be allowed to hold inventory in e-commerce because the large amount of capital that they bring in will make it difficult for smaller sellers in the country or small retailers or mom and pop store to match those economies of scale that one single entity could have. So that's the principle that behind government's decision to stick with having foreign funded e-commerce companies have only marketplace models.
Okay, so how have the companies been reacting to that, and what do these new proposed e commerce rules do about it?
So far what's been happening is that e-commerce, while the government has been issuing rules trying to stop these foreign funded e-commerce companies like Amazon and Flipkart from holding or controlling any kind of inventory, these companies have been finding some way around the existing rules. So by bringing this, the government really tightens the nose on these companies by saying that now you're covered under the Consumer Protection Act, and this is what you'll have to do, failing which there'll be certain criminal liabilities that will be subjected to as laid down in the act.
Right, so let's talk about these new proposed rules. One of them is that there is going to be a ban on specific flash sales. What do we understand by that, and what kind of ban is it going to be?
So, even e-commerce companies have kind of sought clarification on what the nature of these flash sales is that have been banned. So when the government last month issued these draft rules for comments from stakeholders, it just defined flash sales as a very generic thing, and it said that these won't be allowed. But only hours later, it clarified saying that only specific flash sales have been banned and conventional flash sales will be allowed. But even companies have sought more information in this regard, that what exactly these flash sales that have been banned mean. What is it that the government exactly wants banned?
And I think there is also this sense that since even brick and mortar stores also have similar sales where heavy discounting takes place, that, banning this for just e commerce sites is a bit discriminatory towards them.
So what the flash sale actually is, that we see on a regular basis that whenever there's a smartphone launch, the e-commerce portal will have a 2-3 minute flash sale that all the pieces will be sold out within a couple of minutes. And they'll have put a limited number of pieces on sale for the purpose of that. It's done essentially to create a buzz around that product, and they're trying to market that product better. But so I think that's where the problem lies. That's where the government has problem with flash sales, saying that you're again controlling inventory to some extent. So in principle, that's what seems to be the government's concern.
And the other thing that these rules have also introduced is this concept of a fallback liability. What will that require these e commerce companies to do?
So what the government is saying, that in certain cases where a good or a service has been delivered after being ordered from a particular e-commerce marketplace, and if that product is not up to the mark, or it has caused any injury, so to say, or any distress to the customer, or it's not the best product that has been delivered, or in just general parlance, if we say that all these things that we've been reading about, that someone ordered an iPhone but received brick of soap in it instead of the smartphone. So for cases like that, what was happening so far was that the particular seller which is using the e-commerce marketplace to sell that product was held liable. But now what the government is asking of e-commerce companies is that the platform itself shall be liable for any such shortfall in products, in delivery of products. So here what the e-commerce companies are arguing is that for all these several FDI rules that they've been coming out with over the years, you're asking e-commerce companies to have lesser and lesser control on the inventory and therefore the supply chain. In that case, how can it be possible that if some third party seller who's just using that platform to sell their product, if they are delivering a product which is not up to the mark, how can the marketplace or the platform be held liable? So that's the contention that there between the companies and the government.
And are there any other rules that particularly stand out in this draft?
So, there are a couple of things which e-commerce companies have raised with the government. They've had a couple of meetings with the Consumer Affairs Ministry, and there's something pertaining to the definition of related party. So, what the companies are seeking is that the definition be condensed from the current very wide-ranging entities that it could cover. So, the draft e-commerce regulations, like I said, it reads back to the Companies Act for the definition of related party. So, what it states is that an e-commerce company must ensure that nothing is done by related parties or associated enterprises, which the e-commerce entity cannot do itself. So now what the e-commerce companies are arguing that related party could mean a whole lot of things. It could mean logistic players that they engage with. It could mean, for example, say someone who they're using a third party packaging service, they're using a third party delivery service. But if those entities are related to the e-commerce company, then things get a little bit trickier. So that is something that the companies have asked the government to clarify.
So, when we look at these proposed rules, how are they expected to affect consumers, considering this is happening under the Consumer Protection Act?
So these rules are called consumer protection e-commerce rules, but experts and those tracking the e-commerce sector, what they've been telling us that these rules, what they're actually doing is they're blatantly limiting consumer choices further by really asking e-commerce companies to take the fallback liability, by asking them to put a ban on flash sales. There are a lot more things that these rules are asking of e-commerce companies, like if you're selling a product that's not made in India, then you should provide the consumer with choice of a similar product that's manufactured in India. And what these experts are arguing is that there are ways to promote domestically manufactured goods, but this does not seem to be it. So to that extent, we'll have to actually wait and see how they actually have an impact on the consumer. But the broader principle is that the lesser control a platform will have on its supply chain, the more are the chances of there being a problem with what products or services are being delivered that are ordered from these platforms.
And how are these proposed rules expected to impact the ease of doing business for e-commerce platforms?
So that's also something that we'll have to see once these rules get implemented. Of course, there's a lot of compliance burden that gets added through these rules, because alongside these very operational requirements that the government has put in for e-commerce companies, there are also these requirements, that have been taken sort of from the IT rules that were announced earlier this year, which include things like having the company provide certain data to law enforcement within a stipulated time period, having a local grievance officer. So things like that, while having a grievance officer and things like that, they may lay down a certain framework for consumer protection, but all in all, it adds compliance requirements for the companies.
And in the end, we talk about deaths by lightning. At least 41 people were killed in separate incidents of lightning in Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh. Following this, Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced ex gratia of 2 lakh rupees each to the next of kin of the deceased. Deaths due to lightning have reportedly become a frequent incident in the country. In July last year, for example, 40 people were killed by lightning in Bihar in 2 separate incidents. As a whole, India sees 2,000 to 2,500 lightning deaths every year on average. In fact, lightning is the biggest contributor to accidental deaths due to natural causes. Indian Express's Amitabh Sinha writes that despite this, lightning remains among the least studied atmospheric phenomena in the country. Occurrences of lightning are not tracked in India, and there is simply not enough data for scientists to work with. Often, safety measures and precautions against lightning strikes do not receive as much publicity as other natural disasters like earthquakes. Amitabh Sinha also points out that lightning rarely hits people directly, but such strikes are almost always fatal. People are most commonly struck by what is called ground currents. The electrical energy, after hitting a large object such as a tree on Earth, spreads laterally on the ground for some distance, and people in the area receive electric shocks. It becomes more dangerous if the ground is wet, which it frequently is because of the accompanying rain, or if there is metal or other conducting material on it. This is why taking shelter under a tree or lying flat on the ground can be dangerous. In case of the possibility of lightning, people should move indoors in a storm. However, even indoors, people should avoid touching electrical fittings, wires, metal, and water. You were listening to Three Things by The Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.